Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you guys there? If you're there, I can't hear you yet.
Hey, Jim.
Hello.
Hey, you can sit here. They'll be in and out. So I have Angelica here.
How are
Great.
you?
Good. Welcome. How are you today?
Doing good.
Are you on, sound like you're on the laptop or are you on the telephone?
No, we're on the telephone, but you sound kind of different.
I'm trying to go hands-free. I can always plug in a microphone if need be. Are you hearing me okay?
Oh, yeah, we understand you.
Okay, good. I'll get Angelica started here. There's a lot to talk about, but I'll just tell you right up front, Angelica, next couple of days is kind of that old analogy about feeling like you're drinking out of a fire hose. There'll be a lot coming at you. But I would just say, there's some real simple, basic stuff to learn that'll help you with virtually every customer. So we'll just jump right in if you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so let's start with kind of some basics and background. And in particular with you, I want to spend a little time talking about the Hispanic market and kind of what I've shared with Robert and bring you up to speed on that part first, because just as soon as you're kind of ready, I told him we probably need to give you, at least a few days to get your feet under you on the training side. And then we'd like to start to run some ads in Spanish. But the thing I want you to understand right up front about that is I've had experience with that in multiple places. And I think the key thing that I want to do is what I'm recommending for Robert is that there are a lot of places out there that put up a sign that say, se habla español or whatever, and they try to attract the Spanish speaking customer. But I think it's way more than just putting up a sign and having one person on staff who's bilingual. What we really want to do is try to illustrate to those customers that we're really committed to making them feel comfortable doing business with us. And so,
Okay.
I'm going to welcome working with you in that regard to figure out how to help Robert as a company to demonstrate that level of commitment. And that to me means, whether it comes to cashiering or whether it's a website or, in all places where our customers come in contact with us. For those that are more comfortable speaking Spanish, we want to try to make that commitment. So we're not going to solve that today or maybe even this week, but just know that that's part of what I'm urging Robert to do is work with me to help create that level of commitment and demonstrate that level of commitment. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just a matter of kind of installing a whole program or system, and I've got a system, but of course all the materials are in English, and we'll be helping to do a lot of those. But again, I look forward to working with you on that as we move forward. But obviously those customers that respond to the ads in Spanish, we're going to want you to greet those customers and work with them. And so let's talk first about just the program in general. I want you to know first that the program that we're helping Robert to install is meant to be kind of the big buzzwords day in and day out are going to be flexibility and creativity. Like we always just sort of want to pride ourselves in being as flexible as anybody in the area that's providing financing. Is sort of like the attitude is if anybody can do it, it's us, because nobody's more flexible than we are. So that's sort of the approach that we want to take into our work every day. And then the creativity part is really ties to often the customers that we meet, they've got a problem. And first we need to get them to share that with us. What is the obstacle? What's the problem? And then often the customers that we work with, so many of them don't know how to solve their own problem. And of course, they don't know what tools we have available in terms of flexibility. So that's where the creativity comes in for you. I want to help you get to the place where you can be creative and flexible. Now, once you kind of figure out what the customer's challenge is or problem is, we find ways to solve that problem and work around it and try to be the solution. It's like if anybody is going to help solve their problem and help them get financing, it's going to be us. Okay.
Okay.
So that's sort of the attitude that we want to bring to this. And of course, you know that I'm sure Robert's already shared with you that, the whole buy here, pay here program is brand new for him. And that's what part of what I'm helping him install. And we just started a Facebook ad last week. I think it finally started running on Thursday, and it's really stirred up a lot of activity and some appointments. And we know there's going to be a lot of business opportunity there. So we're excited about that, but it's just kind of a, we're having to get up to speed quickly to learn this. But the Facebook ad really was to help prove to Robert that there is plenty of business opportunity. And I think what I look forward to doing too is working with you to show him how much opportunity there is on the Spanish speaking side too. So anyway, we'll get to that. Okay, so let's start talking about how to handle customers. And for our session this morning, and I'm available to do another one. I had in mind to do a team sales meeting tomorrow, and then I'm available even to do a second session with you later this afternoon. But I think rather than try to hit you with too much right up front, plus these are going to be recorded sessions that you can refer to later. But for this morning, I wanted to talk about how to handle phone calls and how to handle like Facebook interaction. And the best way for you to see what we're doing on Facebook interaction is to get you logged in to see the Facebook page as an administrator, because what that lets you do is it lets you see how we've responded to comments on the Facebook post, and then how we've responded to direct messages, and then also, and we're all, I'm teaching them now with this first post, kind of how I recommend handling the language and what's been most effective. But you'll see when you get in the messaging that some of the messages have language in there along the line of, appointments are always a good idea. And I really do that as a courtesy, thinking as much about the customer. We just want to make sure that when you come, that we've got somebody,
Willing to help.
right, prepared and scheduled to be there, available to help you. It's, it's frustrating for customers to show up and have to wait because people are out to lunch or with a customer or whatever. So when we make an appointment, we just want to make sure that we're available to help them at that time. And so I always just say, and you'll see the language. And one of the things about being an administrator, when you get in there, you'll be able to see comments that I personally put in there. It'll say, this comment, even though it was done as 4M Autoplex, this one was by Jim and this one was by Samantha, whatever. So you'll see those things in there. And I would just urge you to kind of look at the ones that I have done so that you see the language that I use to sort of, I try to be really positive and hit them with really, good things to know about doing business with us, sort of things. And then I'll just ask them to make an appointment. And you're going to see that a lot of customers try to negotiate the deal on the Facebook thread or, in the inbox or even by phone. They, and at the end of the day, what most customers are trying to do is avoid driving to 4 different places to find the one, that can help them and or has what they're looking for. And I think that's really important to think about, that when you're on the phone with a customer, whether you're on Facebook, whatever, just remember that often the customers are doing that because everybody's got a cell phone. And if I can reach out to 3 or 4 places today and eliminate 3 of them, then I'm going to choose to drive to the one that I didn't eliminate. And so I think that elimination component is really important to think about, because I really emphasize, in whatever medium you're using, Facebook, telephone, on the lot, whatever, I would just say we want to try to say as little as possible, keeping in mind that the customer would potentially eliminate us. And one of the examples I gave when I was out there at the dealership a couple of weeks ago, as I said, if a customer calls in and they're trying to get specifics about, hey, I saw, in your buy here, pay your inventory that you guys have a Ford Explorer, I'm interested in that, how many miles are on it, then, if we say, well, it's got 170,000 miles and that's all we tell them, and then they call the next place and they've got a Ford Explorer at a similar price and it's only got 140,000 miles, then even though when we hung up from the customer, they said, okay, I may come see you after work today, you know, the reality is that as soon as they talk to somebody else that's got a vehicle with 140,000 miles, if that dealership will approve them, then we probably missed that one, right? Just by saying maybe more than we should have. Now, there's nothing that I'm going to say that should suggest to you that I'm going to be evasive with the customer, deceptive, that I'm going to misrepresent anything. We never should have to lie to a customer at all, because we have a good program, we have good inventory. You know, we're going to do business right. So that just means nothing I'm suggesting that you do. These are just techniques as to ways to talk as little as possible and try to convert the thing to an appointment. So in the example that I gave the guys a couple of weeks ago, following this Ford Explorer example, is I think it's important to get customers off of the subject of inventory, because the approach that I'm recommending is that we really can't ever approve a customer by phone. And you'll see some of the language in this Facebook post where I try to explain that to customers, to say, unfortunately, we just can't know if you're approved until you get here. There's just way too many variables. So you have to be here, you have to fill out an application, we have to have your application done in the office. You got to choose a vehicle, and then we've got to work up price and terms, down payment, payment amount, length of contract, just tons of stuff. So I can't really tell a customer yes or no they'll be approved on the phone, or certainly on Facebook. So you'll see those dialogue that I had with a couple customers in that way. And it sounds like we're being kind of deceptive, but the reality is we simply can't give a yes or no until we have all the information. So what we want to try to do is respond to those in a way that's positive and say, you know, most people are approved. Most people will be approved. We just can't know until you get here and choose a car, you know, and do the application. So we just try to be positive, and we try to emphasize a couple of good things about doing business with us. And here's why you're going to want to come and see us. And then just when can you come in? So going more specifically on this question about the Ford Explorer, let's say I noticed that over the weekend, the guys got a Facebook album put together. So now on 4M's Facebook page, if you go to a Facebook album called Current Inventory, you can see all the cars in there. And they did just what I would have recommended, which is they just put, you know, 2011 Kia Sorento, you know, 2005, you know, Jeep Liberty, whatever, just real basic information. And part of the reason I want to do that is because, you know, really in this process that you're going to learn, we get the customer in, of course, we sit down with them and kind of find out what their needs are, and then we select a vehicle, and we fill out a test drive sheet before they go out, and that kind of gets us some basic information about the customer. And then the point is that there will come a time in the process where it's time to choose a car. But early on, when we're meeting a customer, it's really just about getting them comfortable doing business with us, helping them understand how our program works and what they can expect. And then there will come a time to choose an actual vehicle and work up numbers. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that in your working with them, again, regardless of whether it's on the phone or Facebook or wherever, we're just going to try to de-emphasize the matter of choosing a car. So for example, when that customer asks, you know, how many miles are on that Ford Explorer that's on Facebook, I would just recommend saying, you know, I could run out there and check if you need an exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's got about 170,000 miles. Again, I can check if that's really important to you. Can I ask you, does it have to be an SUV? Is that what you're looking for? Like, how many in your family? And you know, and why an SUV? Are you needing 4-wheel drive, or, you know, what's the real reason behind that? You know, I'm just trying to. So what really happened there that's pretty significant is the customer asked me a question. I tried to answer it kind of vaguely in a more general way, and then I started turning around and asking the questions instead. So I just, as a way for me to, you know, start kind of finding out what their interests are. And so I'm going to just say, you know, well, if it's a 4-door vehicle that you're interested in, I've got several others, you know, to choose from. And obviously you just want to get down here and have a look at them. Are you able to come right away? You know, my name is Angelica. If you're able to come right away, I'm available. I can meet with you soon. Are you able to come over right now? I could put you down for an appointment for, you know, 11:30, whatever. So that, you see what I'm doing? I'm just trying to not talk about inventory I'm trying to ask the questions and find out really what their needs are. And what's going to be different for you and working at 4M is I want you to imagine, think about the customer that's got poor credit. They're out shopping for a car. At some of the competitors, at most of the competitors, they're going to pull up on the lot. When they get out of the car, the salesperson is going to ask them, where do you work? How long have you worked there? How much down payment do you have? You know, it's pretty much a disqualifying kind of conversation right out of the gate. And what we want to do is be different. And so the approach is most customers are going to qualify, so we don't need to qualify them right away. We're going to focus more on what do they really need? What, like, again, what's the problem? What problem are we trying to solve? What do you guys need in the way of a car? And really just kind of focus on needs and trying to help them choose a car that works for them. Again, just assuming that the customer is going to qualify for financing because most do. Okay. So, you know, it's not credit based. So when you take out the credit, if it's not based on past credit, we're not going to disqualify customers based on past credit, then most customers are going to qualify. And we'll talk soon about exactly what would be disqualifying situations, but just know that, you know, there are some things that, you know, will sort of be disqualifying. Give me a minute. I'm going to get the screen shared so I can start to show you some stuff on the screen. Okay, are you seeing the form now called pre-test drive questionnaire?
Yeah, if I can.
Yes, you can see it?
Okay, yes, I can now.
Okay, good. All right, so so this is a form that we would do early on. And before I start going through the individual components of this form, let me just make sure that we cover, you know, if you think about greeting somebody on the lot, let's just take that example first. You know, if you see on the cameras that there's somebody out there walking through the inventory and you go out to greet them, you're going to have the added problem at 4M that a lot of my clients don't have is you've got both retail inventory, and my definition of retail inventory would be inventory that's available for retail sale, and it's really the customer is either going to pay cash or they're going to qualify for some third-party financing, or they're going to use their own financing. But the bottom line is they're going to, in some form or fashion, they're going to end up paying us cash. We use a third-party lender for the car, right? So that's just what's different from buy here, pay here. So you've got the complication at your dealership of having both kinds of inventory. But so that's all the more reason that if I were at your dealership today and there was a customer out there wandering through the inventory, if I stepped up to talk to them, I'd be saying, hello, welcome. Is this your first time to 4M? And, you know, if they say, yes, it is, that's great. So are you looking for something to just pay cash on? Are you going to arrange your own financing, or could you use some help with financing? You know, we do our own in-house financing now. Are you guys needing help with financing, or you're trying to just find something to pay cash? I really need to know that early on, because you've basically got two types of inventory. And the reality is, if they're looking for in-house financing help from us because of credit circumstances, then there's only going to be a select inventory available that we're prepared to finance in-house. Okay, so that's something to just be aware of, and you've got to kind of be prepared to ask that question early on. Just, is this your first visit to the dealership? Yes or no? And it's just a great way to start conversation. How did you guys learn about us? And just, it's a good way to chit chat and show them that you're really interested in kind of their situation. How did you guys learn about us? Is this your first visit? And then are you looking for something to pay cash, or could you use some help with financing? You know, we've got our own in-house financing program. Are you guys looking for that kind of help? And if the answer is yes to we need credit help with financing, often they're going to volunteer. You know, I saw your ad on Facebook, and unfortunately my credit's not very good, so I'm really came to try to get some help with financing. At which point, when they say that, Angelica, my suggestion is you just say, great, come on inside and let me show you how our finance program works. And then you just turn and start walking toward the building. Okay, because the point of what I'm trying to do there is if that customer really needs help with financing, then let's talk about financing first. You don't have to say that to them, but you can just say, great, come on inside and let me show you how the finance program works. and you just turn and walk and just start walking toward your desk, you know, and so and just be prepared to just turn and go, because this really is about sort of gaining control
I
of
had to
that.
bring them inside.
I'm sorry.
Yes. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I actually worked for a no walk
Okay. Good.
about a year.
Good. So I'm not going to be surprised if some of what we're asking you to do is different maybe than what they would have done. But, you know, this is a program that I've helped dealers install for many years. And you can already hear what I'm trying to do differently. I'm just trying to, you know, treat customers with respect, assume that they're going to qualify, not disqualify them or make them feel like they have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to get a test drive. So, you know, it's part of what the approach that I'm trying to help you guys utilize there. So again, we have the conversation. If they're you know going to need help with financing, great. Come on inside and let me show you how the finance program works. Now, have you already seen? I know Robert prepared a poster with some suggestions from me, and I don't know if he put it up on the wall as a poster, or he talked about putting it under the glass, or you know on each desk. Have you already seen the poster that I'm referring to?
Yes, and I took a picture of it actually.
Good. Okay. So, you know, so think about it this way. If a customer just popped in and they're on a lunch break and headed back to work, whatever, and they've just barely got 5 minutes, then what I'm trying to do with that poster would be to make sure that if I only have 5 minutes with them, I want to emphasize the positives and the high points and the reasons that the customer should feel comfortable doing business with us. And then, you know, as they head back to work, you can always ask them for an appointment. But I'm just trying to make sure that if the customer only gets a few minutes, if we only get a few minutes with them, let's send them home with the positives of why they should feel comfortable making an appointment and coming back to see you instead of all the other people out there. So that's why the poster is important. So I would recommend, you know, if you have one at your desk, you bring the customer inside, have a seat. Let me kind of show you guys how our finance program works. And you sit them down and you run through that poster and you just read every item on the poster to them. And that's why it's there, is to kind of hit those high points. And it kind of helps to slow the customer down and to get comfortable with you and with the company. And you know that it's just, we have to think about what is it like. And of course you worked in a note lot before, then you know kind of what the attitude sometimes of the customers is. They distrust, you know, us typically as car dealers, and so they're coming in a little bit defensive or nervous. We should expect that. And so this poster and getting them away from the cars is really about getting them inside. Let's talk a little bit, and kind of let me help you understand how our finance program works, and then guys can tell me what you're looking for and what your needs are. So you would be doing the poster. I would recommend you would just have a notepad available to be able to just have a conversation with them. And this is just a really simple conversation. Find out what their needs are. What are you guys driving now? What are you looking for? You know, how many kids in the family? How long does you drive to work? I'm just trying to get a sense of what they really need in the way of a car. And the other thing that's important that happens right here is we can understand their needs first, because in reality, if they describe to you that, you know, I've got 2 kids, and you know, I'm a single mom, I've got 2 kids, and you know, I work full time, um, you know, I need to know that, because you know, that just tells me what they really need is, you know, a simple car because what they need and what they want might be two different things. And so one of the things I spent quite a bit of time on was out there a couple of weeks ago is, you know, we should not be surprised that every customer that comes in, you know, might want the nicest SUV or vehicle that we got on the lot with only $300 down. You know, we shouldn't be surprised that if we give every customer that option, they're going to want the nicest car we got for a low down payment. And we've got to do better at kind of navigating that, because one, that's not good for you or the customer, because one, the customer's far less likely to get approved, which is not good for you. You don't want to spend 2 hours with a customer and have them not get approved. So we need to choose the right vehicle that kind of matches their situation, which is all the more reason that you're hearing me say I like to pull the customers away from the cars early on and bring them inside and talk first if they're really needing our help with financing. So you see what I'm trying to do there. I want to talk to them. I want to find out what their needs are, and then once I get a good feel for their needs, you know, I can ask them, you know, are you guys you know, looking for a four-door car. I mean, it sounds like a four-door car would work for you, and it's going to be more affordable. Is that going to work for you? And she, you know, the woman might say, well, she was really kind of hoping, you know, that Ford Explorer out there. And you can say, look, I'm always happy to help people buy the car that they want. And if that's definitely the car that you want, then, you know, we'll try to make it work. It's just, you know, that SUV is a little bit more expensive. It's probably going to require more down payment. It might be a little higher payment amount, you know, et cetera. So, you know, but if that's the car that you want, you know, we'll definitely, you know, try to work that out. So there's really something significant that happened there in my response. I didn't say, you know, unfortunately you shared with me you had 500 down. Unfortunately, I can't help you with the SUV. You know, it's going to require more down payment than that. So rather, my approach is I haven't even asked them about down payment yet. I'm not even worried about that part yet. I'm just going to say, you know, I'm happy to help you buy the car you want. Just understand that the SUVs typically are more expensive. They typically require more down payment. But if that's the car that you definitely want, then I'm happy to try to help you, you know, buy that particular vehicle. Let's take a minute to talk about what we call suggested down payments. And I don't know what Robert's done yet in terms of your inventory, but I'm going to suggest that every car on the buy here, pay here inventory, first of all, is somehow identified differently. I'm hoping that they've got some sort of flagging on them or something that so that you can easily show people what I often call the green flag inventory, meaning, you know, all these cars out here with green flags are cars that we can help with in-house financing on. And so obviously the price range varies, but, you know, that's sort of to help you to know which cars are available for in-house financing. And then to be able to know what we call a suggested down payment. Have you seen anything on that yet?
No,
Okay,
not
so
yet.
okay, so, you know, I would recommend that we would have a list compiled, and I can work with Robert on this to help you guys get this, but I would recommend that as a salesperson, you would have a list at your desk that would
Yeah.
say, you know, the selling price of the car, the suggested down payment, and maybe the miles on the car, just kind of you know, a retail inventory list for you guys as salespeople to refer to. But let me talk to you about what I mean by the suggested down payment. I said that we're flexible. So when we say suggested down payment, that language is very intentional. You know, when we say suggested, it's just what it means. It's a recommendation. It's what we would suggest to give you the best chance of having your loan approved. Okay, so let me say that part again. It's a number that we would suggest. We're flexible about it. We'll work with you on any vehicle, but that suggested down payment is the amount that we would recommend to anyone to have the best chance of having their loan approved on that particular vehicle. So, you know, it's just kind of a way to say that it's flexible. It's simply a suggestion, obviously. And so what I would always say to a customer if they came in, because more often what's going to happen, Angelica, is you're going to greet a customer who's already maybe talked to somebody on Facebook or you know, they look through the Facebook inventory, and so they're going to be coming in saying, you know, can I see that that Ford Explorer? And so again, hopefully we've already had conversations and we've kind of pulled them away from cars and now you're in the office having this conversation. And often what's going to happen is the customer is going to volunteer information about down payment. They're going to, you know, when you first step up to talk to them, because they don't want to waste your time or theirs, they're going to often volunteer, look, you know, I don't have very good credit. I really need some help with credit. My last car got repossessed, or, you know, I've been without a car now for weeks, but I just got a job. And so they're going to kind of be volunteering that, and they're going to say, I'm trying to find something, you know, with $400 down. You know, they're just going to volunteer numbers like that. And so when you sit down with them, you know, you're basically going to say, you know, I know that SUV is something that you're interested in. You mentioned that you had $400 down. You know, the suggested down payment on the SUV, and keep in mind we're flexible in this. We'll always work with people, but the suggested down payment on that SUV is $900. So before we go drive that, can we talk about, would you have a way to come up with that additional $500? You know, either have you got a trade-in that we can talk about? Because we'll definitely trade for most anything in any kind of condition. Is there a trade-in, or what about, you know, if you got a friend or family member that maybe that would help you with the other 500? I'm happy to try to help you buy the SUV, but you know, those do require more down payment, and we are definitely flexible, but just understand that, you know, the closer you can get to the suggested down payment, the better my chance of being able to send you home in it today. You know, so that's the best way I can say it. I'm trying to be mindful of the customer's time and my own time. And again, I'm flexible, but I'm just trying to say the best chance of approval is for you to, you know, be able to come pretty close to the suggested down payment. So that's very different than me saying, yeah, unfortunately, I can't help you with that SUV with only 400 down. You know, I'm trying to help them buy the car they really want. I'm trying to emphasize that I'm flexible, and I'm saying, is there some way we can come up with the other 500? Or if you did 400 today and we were able to get it approved with only 400 a day, how soon could you come up with some more down payment? And we're having all these conversations before we actually go out on the test drive. But again, this is typically if the customer has volunteered that, because they typically will. Okay, so any questions about that before I go into the test drive sheet?
No.
Okay, so you can hear what I'm doing. I'm just trying to be flexible. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to help them buy the car that they want. And so I'm really trying to treat my job as more of a customer advocate. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not trying to sell them on any particular car. If I'm selling anything, it's I'm selling them on 4M as a company and me personally and kind of the way we do business. So that's really all I'm selling. And I'm, you know, I'm doing that, you know, in the way that you've heard me do it so far. But I'm not out here to sell them a car. I'm here to kind of help them navigate our finance process, and I'm sort of helping them through a process. So I'm really more their advocate who's trying to help them understand how our program works and how to help them, you know, solve their problem with wheels and help them, you know, get the financing that they need. So again, I'm just an advocate. Now, I've got a customer has come in. Again, let's just kind of take the most likely scenario where they've already kind of got interest in a particular car, and let's say they've got a little you know, four-door car that they're interested in, and you've got a suggested down payment of $700 as an example, and they've got you know, $400. So now you're going to start, and you're just going to tell them, I'm happy to try to work with you on that. Let's fill out this test drive questionnaire, and again, this is before the test drive, it's before the application, but it's meant to really get some basic information about them before they go out and test drive. And I would say that the other purpose of this form is to help create the conversation about down payment. So let me just go through it line by line here. You know, you're obviously going to fill out the part at the top. If you've got the vehicle handy, the key for the vehicle they're interested in, you'll write the stock number in the upper right. And then you're going to ask them, have you ever financed a vehicle with us before, either as a buyer or a co-buyer? You know, they probably wouldn't have done in-house financing since it's a brand new program for you guys. But if they ever did finance something, you know, through another lender or something, you would put that there, yes or no, and maybe make a note. Yes, they bought a 05 F-150 and financed it with, you know, Santander or whatever. So you would put that there. And then, do you have a valid or current driver's license? Yes or no? And, you know, we just get a yes. And if they do, I'm going to need a photocopy of that. So if you want to grab that, let me see that. And then, are you at least 18 years of age? And then, do you have current insurance in your name on another vehicle? Yes or no? What's the status of your insurance? And then, have you recently filed, or are you in the process of filing bankruptcy? Yes or no? So we have to ask that question of them very specifically. And if they give us some sort of delayed answer, or sort of they're shifting their chair like they're uncomfortable, or there's something about the way they answer that tells us in their body language that something's not right, then we have to stop and talk about that. Is there something going on with a bankruptcy? Are you guys already working on a bankruptcy? Have you met with an attorney? What's going on? So you just have to stop and talk to them about that. But you know, that first question is really just a way for us to learn if they've had a history with us, so we can look at that. But those next 4 questions, if you think about it, those are sort of disqualifying questions. And I told you, you know, I'm not going to ask qualifying questions on the lot. I'm going to assume customers qualify. But before we go into a test drive, we need to ask these very specific kind of questions about disqualifying circumstances. If they don't have a valid driver's license, we're not going to be able to let them test drive today. So we might as well talk about that right now. If they're under 18, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, I got you, sorry.
No, you're fine. And so, and then are you at least 18 years of age? So that's another potentially disqualifying question. And if they're only 17, they could still test drive. You just have to stop and talk to them about it right here and say, you know, you can qualify to test drive. There's no problem with letting you test drive that truck today, but just know that I can't help you with financing unless you've got a co-buyer, you know, family members or somebody who's willing to co-sign with you, you know, as a co-buyer, because I've got to have somebody that's over 18 on the contract. And so you just would stop and talk to them about that at that point in time. And so that's why it's a disqualifying situation. Do you have current insurance in your name on another vehicle? Now, talk to Robert about this one. When I was there, they were checking on the insurance about being covered on test drive. I think we determined, or I think he was expecting to find out that customers are covered on their test drive. So what we want is for the customer not to have to buy insurance in order to be able to test drive. We want them to test drive on our insurance. And then even if the answer is no, I don't currently have insurance, we should still be okay on a test drive, but we just want to know that this customer is going to have to get insurance before they buy a vehicle today. And the reason that's important is because we know that, you know, if they're saying they've got 500 down, you know, we're going to have to, when we get to the down payment worksheet, we're going to have to talk about how much of that do we need to save back to buy insurance today, because you've got to have insurance before I can send you home in a car. And so we just have to know that going in if the insurance is a question. And then, have you recently filed, or are you in the process of filing bankruptcy? I would say we'll wait until you get one of those, and then you can ask Robert. But if they're in the process of filing bankruptcy, then you just pretty much have to stop. If they say yes, then you pretty much have to stop and cover that with Robert before they go out on a test drive, because a bankruptcy can definitely be a disqualifying situation. And I don't want to go too deep into all that right now, but just know that if they say yes to bankruptcy, we need to stop and find Robert and let's have a conversation.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if they provided you my number, but while you're making notes there, I'm going to give you my number so that anytime during the next, anytime, frankly, if Robert's not available and you've got a question, you get hung up in the sales process or a specific question about a customer, you can call me directly anytime. You ready to write my number?
Yes.
It's 903-816-0216. And if you get my voicemail, I'll call you back quickly, but just feel free to call me anytime. That's part of the service that I provide, Robert, you know, as a consultant advisor in this thing is, you know, we're trying to coach you guys on, you know, all these things. So anytime Robert's not available, by all means, call me directly and we'll work through it. So now we move to the question, do you have the suggested down payment today? Yes or no? And so it's a simple thing of, okay, so that car that you're interested in driving, you know, Mr. Customer, is $900 down. I know you told me you had, or let's pick the $700 car that we were talking about. So it's got a suggested down payment of $700. I know you told me that you had $400 cash today. So can we just need to talk about that. How soon do you think you could do some more down payment? And that's why it says if they don't have the suggested down payment of $700, then the manager needs to give authorization to test drive. So all we're trying to do there, Angelica, is make sure that we regulate or we avoid that scenario that I'm talking about where, you know, every customer with a low down payment is out there driving the nicest cars that we have, because that's going to create a cash problem for Robert, and it's going to cause you a problem because deals are going to get turned down when the customer's, you know, way short of the down payment. So if the customer is short of the suggested down payment, then we're going to just say, do you have a suggested down payment? No. And you're going to make a note over there. They have 400, could pay an additional 300 in 2 weeks. And so that you'll make that note and you'll take that to Robert, you know, for approval. If the customer's got the full $700, then you're going to just proceed and go ahead and let them test drive, unless there's a problem, you know, with any of those disqualifying questions we've already covered. But if we're good on all those, and you will be most of the time, then and they've got the suggested down payment, then you're going to go test drive. Now, I do know that Robert is away quite a bit. I mean, he's out buying cars and is away from the dealership quite a bit. So, you know, we need to talk through that. But same situation, early on these first several deals that you work, feel free to call me directly and let's talk about any of these where the customer's short on the down payment. And I'll even get on a speakerphone, conversation with you and them and talk through that and sort of authorize them at a time when Robert's not available. So it's just part of what I do is sort of stand in. I won't be approving any deals. Robert's still going to need to do that, but I can certainly coach you through any of the steps leading up to the approval, and so on. And so now the next one is, have you been informed of the opportunity to have the vehicle that you choose independently inspected later? See that the word later is underlined, prior to purchase. And we always talk about that now because we want you to know that if you choose a car and we're going to move ahead with financing, before you're approved, we're going to have you take the car and have it independently inspected by somebody you trust. But you don't need to do that now. We just want to make sure you're about to go out on about a 15-minute test drive. So we don't want to take it to a mechanic yet. You're going to have a chance to do that later. So then you'll circle yes. They've been informed about that. And I covered that in pretty good detail with the guys a couple weeks ago. If we're not very specific about this right at this stage, sometimes customers going to go on a test drive without you, and they're going to, you think they're going to be right back, and they're gone for an hour and a half because they went to take the car to their uncle to get him to look at it mechanically. And we don't want that yet. So we need to stop that and make sure. This is why we ask the question, have you been informed? You're aware that you'll have a chance to do that later. And then we move on to, do you have the approved child safety seats? If there are children here riding in the car, we just need to make sure, do you have child safety seats for everybody that's required to be in a safety seat? And I haven't talked to Robert about this, but you guys might want to have a couple of those around so that, if there is any question about it, that you've got booster seats or child safety seats to be able to send with them. But otherwise, just know that, it almost never happens. They've either they don't have children along, or they've got the necessary safety seats they can move over from their own car. And then once approved, would the vehicle be used for deliveries or home health? We could change that language to say, Uber, driving Uber or Lyft, et cetera. What we're trying to learn there is, would you be driving this vehicle a lot of miles? And if the answer on that one is yes, yes, I'm a home health nurse, and I have a rural route, and I drive a lot of miles every week, then, you would want to cover that with Robert before we had a customer go test drive, because there's a lot of things that kind of get into approval here. But you can imagine that what we don't want to do is approve a customer with a small down payment on a car that's already got a lot of miles, and they're going to be out driving it on dirt roads for a lot of miles. It's just a conversation that we need to have with the customer before we move ahead. And we're trying to have those kind of conversations before we ever go test drive. Because once we test drive, we wouldn't, probably not surprised that the customer's probably going to like the car. They're going to fall in love with it. They're going to want to buy it. And now we've got to go backwards, back up and talk about something different. So we're just trying to have, that's the purpose of this form, is just to try to have any of those kind of conversations now before they ever go test drive and fall in love with something. And we talk through the down payment part. So it just, and then we ask, how did you learn about us? Which I would definitely recommend that you get in the habit of asking that question when you first greet customers out on the lot. It's a good icebreaker conversation thing to talk about. How did you guys learn about us? And if they saw a Facebook ad, that's helpful. If they're responding to your Facebook ad, which is a buy here, pay here, all based on financing, then that's going to help how to help that customer and get them, in there. But so again, I would recommend asking that question out on the lot. So by the time you get inside and are filling out this form, you'd already know the answer, as they drove by and just saw a vehicle, and swung in. I haven't heard Robert talk about radio. I don't know if he's ever done radio, but right now we're really very much focused on the Facebook ads. So,
Right now, okay.
Yeah, right now we're just, for buy here, pay here, we're just testing Facebook, and the Facebook ad is really blown up. Now, we'll talk with you soon about how to get more specific on the Facebook side. I think Robert's got his wife handling a lot of the Facebook marketing, and so we're working with her on that part too. But the reality is, we're expecting a lot of your customers that are going to be popping in are going to be coming from Facebook. We're doing the best we can to get those customers locked down to an appointment, and then we'll go from there. But now you see, once you fill that out about how did they learn about us, then the form says, by signing below, I certify, that all responses above to be true and accurate to the best of my knowledge, and I understand that test drives are limited to 15 minutes. So my understanding is you guys will not be riding with them So you're going to just tell them, you know, we're sitting here having this conversation. It's 11:45 Texas time. You would just say to them, you know, okay, so you need initial right there saying you understand it's a 15-minute test drive. So I'm going to see you back here at 12 o'clock. And just tell them, you know, on the test drive, all we're trying to do is let you go drive it and make sure it fits good, it feels good, drives nice. Just remember, you'll have a chance to take it to a mechanic later and have it thoroughly checked out. So we're not so much concerned about mechanical stuff right now. Just make sure it drives good and feels good, and this is a car that you would want to own, you know, subject to a mechanical inspection. Okay, and then kind of say that, and then, you know, if they've got their own insurance, I would gather that up and get a copy of it, and then of course a copy of their driver's license, and then you can hand that stuff back to them and keep that keep it with the form itself. So any questions about that form?
No, sir.
Okay.
On the way, I think I read on something, if they're 21 years or younger, then you have to drive with them.
That would be a question for Robert, because that's going to be specific to their, yeah, it's going to be specific to their insurance policy. So I never heard the outcome on that. You know, we talked about it when I was out there a couple of weeks ago, but I never heard what the real outcome was. But yeah, you'll have to ask Robert. I'd be interested in knowing the answer myself, but yeah, I think it's okay to go ride with them, but it's all the more reason that you want a copy of their driver's license or insurance and a copy of this form. So what I would recommend if I were you, if you do find out you need to go ride with the customer on a certain test drive, I'd get that photocopy, and I would, you know, copy their driver's license, and then I would take that to one of the other salespeople and tell them, hey, I'm going out on a test drive on this certain vehicle, and here's the test drive questionnaire, and make sure the customer, you know, kind of sees you do that. For safety and security, we just want, you know, everybody to know that, you know, we've got a photocopy of the driver's license and leaving the form, and you know, just kind of keeping ourselves secure, you know. So that's what I would recommend. Just leave that copy with somebody else and make sure the customer sees you do that, and say, hey, I'm going on a test drive with Mr. Smith here on the Ford Explorer, and be back in 15 minutes, you know.
Okay.
So that's just kind of for a variety of reasons. So they'll also obviously know where you're gone to, but have the information on who you're with. Okay, so that is probably not. I also would like to take you into the down worksheet, but I think for this morning, we probably have covered a good amount, and I'm thinking it might make more sense to let you, you know, otherwise get acclimated in what you've got to do, and maybe go spend some time with the Facebook thing. And even today, as you're going through that, if you have questions, you know, by all means, give me a call. But I'm thinking, unless Robert's got something else scheduled for you this afternoon, I think we ought to do a second session on the down payment worksheet, which is just to help you understand what that's all about. The way we would do this is you'd have the customer do this test drive questionnaire. You get a copy of their driver's license. You go out and test drive the car, and then, you know, when they return, you're going to say, "What do you think, guys? Is that car going to work for you? If we can get the financing worked out, do you like it? Is that, you know, that going to work?" And then usually the answer is going to be yes. In fact, I was telling them that our data says that about, I forget the exact number, I could look it up, but about at least 2/3 of the time, more like 75% of the time, that customers are going to end up buying the one and only car that they test drove. Okay. So in other words, the reason that matters is, like, it just should tell you or help you confirm kind of maybe what your own experience was in your past buy here, pay here experience, that, you know, the customer, it's really more of a finance-based decision. It's not so much about needing a broad selection of cars. If there's a car that you have that'll meet their needs, it's more driven on financing than it is on the car. And of course there will be exceptions, but for the most part, customers are gonna, you know, they're gonna drive a car as long as you kind of were careful about selecting a car with them. And we've got a car that's pretty close to the down payment, the suggested down payment that we're looking for, then they're going to end up buying and being approved for the one and only car that they test drove. Okay, so now that, you know, if they come back in and they say, yeah, I like that car, then we're going to return to your desk, and then we're going to do what we call a down payment worksheet. So again, I think we'll save that for the next session. We'll just do a separate session this afternoon on that. And
Okay.
so I'll touch base with Robert. I'm going to tentatively suggest, let's see, it's almost noon in Texas. I would say we shoot for like 2:30 Texas time.
Okay.
Can that work for you? Let's just kind of tentatively work for that, toward that, and I'll coordinate with Robert to make sure. But let's plan on another session like this at 2:30 Texas time. We'll do the down worksheet.
Okay, that's
All right.
fine.
Very good.
Right,
I'll let you
thanks.
get back to your stuff. We'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye.